Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Happy Saturday and welcome to Liz Live. I am Liz Statlander, marriage and family therapist and mental health counselor, here to talk today about what else but relationships. So, we're talking today about relationships. We're talking about how to manage the amount of energy that you put into your relationships. And I see that this is a real problem for so many of my clients. And quite frankly, has been a problem for me as well. When you're a giver and you enjoy giving and you enjoy being a part of somebody's life, you want to do things for them and you want to make them happy and you want to feel connected to them. And so we get involved, we fall in love, or it could be with a parent, a sister, a brother. Again, when I talk relationships, I'm literally talking any relationship that's meaningful and that's close. And so many of us get sucked into relationships and we do and we give and we give and we give, and we're really not getting anything back, or we're not getting enough back. And then we feel drained. And we all know this. Many people talk about it, many influencers talk about it, many self-help people talk about it. But noticing that the problem exists and then actually doing something about it are two very different things. So what I want to talk about today is, again, I always like to define the problem. What is the actual problem that we're talking about, which is managing the amount of energy and output that you're putting into your relationships, making sure that you feel as though you are getting back out of your relationships what you're putting into them, so that you don't become worn out, burnt out, drained, and resentful. And we're going to talk about how to actually do that. Practical tools. I'm not just going to say this is a problem and let it go or change without giving you specific instructions and advice and ways that we can do this. So that is what we're talking about today. I'm so excited. Before I get into talking about relationships today and managing our output in them within the context of those relationships, I do want to acknowledge that one of my very dearest friend here in Miami, her dad passed away yesterday. His name was Ted Hensel. I knew Ted for so many years, and he was a great patriarch. He was quite a character. He was 93 when he passed on Friday, July 9th, 2021. And he was blessed with longevity and being a part of a lovely family. But of course, age really doesn't matter when we're talking about grief and when we're talking about death. And you can grieve the same for somebody who's 93 as you would for someone who's 23. And a lot of people will disagree with that and say, when someone's lived that long, that we shouldn't be so sad. And of course, that's a positive way of looking at it. But relationships are relationships, and bonds are bonds, and connections are connections. And it really doesn't matter how old somebody is. When we lose a relationship, it's painful. So I want to send all of my love and my thoughts to the Hendel family this weekend and always. And Ted will be remembered, for many years. I met Ted when I first started working at Gallery Art in Aventura, Florida, which, by the way, is a beautiful art gallery. If you like my wall climbers and pretty much every piece of art in my home, it's from Gallery Art. Incredible contemporary art collection. And it's right here in Aventura, Florida. They also have an online store, so you can go online and buy art there if you'd like. And they're great people, great inventory. And I worked for them in 2004, I believe, or 2005. When I first that's how I first, got exposed to the art field, which I love. And Kenny was my boss. He's the owner, and his sister, Amy, and their dad, Ted, was just always around. He was retired, but he was always kind of wheeling and dealing and coming around the gallery and hanging out. And he was just like part of the team. So we all knew Ted. And so, things will be different without him around in the gallery. But I just wanted to acknowledge that, experience and that relationship, and recognize my friends, the Handles, and wish them, lots of joy from the memories of their father. Okay, so moving forward, good segue into relationships, right? How do we know when we are putting more energy into something than we're getting out? One of my professors used to say in graduate school, never work harder than your clients. And that never really sat well with me, um, because I always have a tendency to work harder in relationships than other people do. And I think I always did that. Maybe not in all of my relationships, but I would say in a good bit of my relationships. And I've always really loved and enjoyed my relationships, and, always been willing to really invest myself in relationships. But over the years, I have learned, as I, grow older into my 40s, and as I continue to practice, the art and the science of couples therapy, relationship therapy, that my professor had a point. And the reason I really didn't like what she said probably is because of two reasons. One, it triggered me in a sense, because I'm thinking when she said that, well, oh my gosh, I put like everything I have into all of my relationships. Am I doing something wrong? And if I hadn't put everything I had into those relationships, would I have eventually cultivated the incredible family relationships that I enjoy today? Um, and so what if you work a little bit harder? What's the difference? And then on the other hand, um, I think I felt like, well, who cares how hard someone else is working or what someone else is doing? We have to choose to put in the amount of energy that we feel comfortable with in a relationship, and that shouldn't be necessarily gauged up against the other person. So I really didn't like that idea when she told us that we should never work harder than our clients. But again, as I've gotten older, I kind of see what she means. Sometimes if I want a positive outcome for my clients more than they actually want it, then I'm working harder than they are. And there's not going to be any result. And it's definitely not going to be the result that I'm hoping for. And that can be very disappointing as a clinician. So the same idea with, me and the clients, the way I feel about working with people and how much energy I'm putting into, can also really hold true for your own relationships, for romantic relationships, for parent-child relationships, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think the first way we can really gauge what's right for us, and I always talk about this, is kind of getting in touch with how you feel physically. Like, what is your physiology? What is your body telling you? And the reason I start there is because it's such a basic um, way to sort of get in touch with what your emotions are and your senses are about a particular relationship or about a certain event per se that has to do with relationships. How do you feel after you have had contact with this person or you've been in this person's presence, and check out your physiology? And the reason I think it's so important to do that is because it's easy, and because your body has all of these sensors in it to sniff out danger. So if you're in a relationship and every time you hang up the phone with this person or every time you spend time with this person, you feel drained, you feel put upon, you feel kind of uncomfortable, like maybe they're asking a little bit too much, um, that might be the beginnings of sort of understanding why this relationship is perhaps not a good one for you. Maybe you're putting too much into it, too much energy into this, and it's going down a black hole. Okay. So imagine, as sort of an example, if you think about a little boy, pining after a little girl, in high school or something. He just loves her, and he asks her out 100 times, and he gives her notes, and he dreams about her all day, and he continuously gets shut down over and over and over again. Every time he goes up to bat, he is literally putting his energy into a suction cup into a dark hole because it's not being returned. And after a while, it gets really hurtful and really draining. So if you take that idea, that really applies to us as adults. It's the same thing. It may not be pining for someone, but it could be doing for somebody. It could be, showing up for people who don't appreciate it, or don't, say thank you, or they're just maybe not looking out for your best interests, or, maybe you've just been hurt over and over and over again and let down over and over and over again. And, enough is enough. So I think that definitely our number one way of sort of discovering, are we putting too much energy into this, is the biology. How do we actually feel physically in our bodies when we think about this person, when we're in the company of this person, when we're leaving this person, when we're interacting with this person? And there are people out there who will suck your energy dry, and or at least that's how it feels. And if you are experiencing that, you really need to stop and reflect upon what your biology is telling you, what your physiology is saying to you, and what I believe your body is telling you is like, "Hey, I don't really like being around this person, and every time we leave this person, I sort of fall asleep, and or I feel like crap, and so listen to yourself because you're being told something very important." So, that's number 1. Number 2 is, do you feel emotionally hurt when you are interacting with this person, after you're interacting with this person, while you're interacting with this person? Are they constantly, taking shots at you, or little digs, or are they, not being kind to you, insulting you, talking only about themselves? And you're just sitting there, and that could be really draining on the soul. And your presence, your mere presence in this person's relationship is draining you of energy, and you're getting nothing back, right? So when you are drained, when your physiology is sending you messages that you're tired, that you're uncomfortable, that you don't feel good, those are all signs to pay attention to, that hey, you know what? This person is not good for me, and I'm not getting anything in return. So I keep giving and showing up and being, even if you're just sitting there listening to other people's crap and they never ask about how you're doing, that's a big sign that you're showing up, you're putting out too much energy and not getting enough back. And I believe that the way we sort of know how to keep our relationships in the right balance is by not feeling that exhaustion. Because when your relationships are in the right place and you're managing your own energies and your own efforts in this relationship, and you're kind of bounding your output, then you give space for the other person to give something back. And then you have a nice, sort of systemic flow there happening, right? And it feels good. It feels healthy. It doesn't feel draining. It doesn't feel exhausting. It doesn't give you a headache or a stomach ache. This is critical to your mental health, to be able to identify these things and to be able to say, you know, I'm going to pull back on my energy input in this relationship because I'm always left feeling neglected, hurt, so on and so forth. And I'm sure if we all sit and really think about it, we can all think about times where we felt this way. Certainly, I know that I can think back to so many relationships in my life of friends, boyfriends, family members, where I was always present, always showing up, always making the efforts. And I was continuously disappointed by having those efforts not returned, whether it's phone calls, whether it's, making plans with somebody. And it takes, I think, a lot of years and a lot of wisdom and a lot of maturity to really get the courage to manage that energy and that output in the relationship to say, no, I don't want to do that because I'm not feeling good and I'm not getting anything back. And I think we feel obligated so often to relationships based upon, titles, right? Like titles of, or maybe not titles so much as, titles or roles. Like, so it's my brother, it's my grandmother, it's my aunt, it's my cousin, it's my best friend, oh, it was my college roommate, oh, it was my whatever. And so we associate meanings with these different titles and these different roles that people have played in our lives. And then we listen to that cultural story and we go, okay, they are in this role, therefore I owe them something. I owe them, my time. I owe them my energy. I owe them my love. But I think the more that you go on in life, you realize you really don't owe anybody anything. Um, and no one owes you anything either. That we're all here to help each other out in some mystical, way that I certainly don't understand. And it's okay to receive things from other people and not just be the giver all the time. And it's okay if you're feeling like you're being almost set up in these relationships to be hurt, and you're doing it to yourself, of course. You're setting yourself up over and over and over again to be hurt in these relationships and then just coming up empty. Relationships have 2 people at least, remember that. 2 people in order to have a relationship, or 2 entities. Like, it could be the self, you have a relationship with yourself, okay, but other than that, you have relationships with others, and that's 2. So, both people should feel like, "Hey, this is an equal amount of energy that we're putting in. We feel nourished and rejuvenated and refreshed in this relationship, not sucked out of life and drained and tossed aside and, you know, treated like, a secondary thought." And of course, we're not going to be everything to everyone. And all of our relationships may look a little different. And that's perfectly natural and perfectly okay. And there will be some relationships that you're going to put so much energy into. And there's going to be some relationships that you might put a little less, depending on time and circumstance and who they are. But whenever we give too much of ourselves away, we give away all of our power, we give away all of our self. And even if you have the best of intentions with the giving and the output, the high output of energy, I will almost guarantee you that you will wind up hurt, tired, resentful, and frustrated. I mean, I'll guarantee it because I've been there so many times. And therapists, we are, I think by nature, we are givers. We are caretakers. We want to heal everybody. So if you really get to know most therapists at a deeper personal level, which most people probably don't get to do, um, if you meet most of us, you'll see that we've all had, most of us anyway, have all had, a lot of trauma in our lives, a lot of painful experiences. We've seen a lot of instability, either in our lives or in the lives of those we're close to. And the process of becoming a therapist, um, I think of being a good therapist, is taking not just your education and, your practical experience and your internships and your clinics, but also taking your personal experiences and the experiences of all your clients and putting it together in a big pot and being able to speak to your clients on, a level of not just, you know, scholastic education, but also experience. And I would absolutely guarantee anybody watching this that if you give too much of yourself away to other people, that you will not win the love of that person, most likely. You will wind up feeling drained, tired, and unappreciated and resentful. And you'll just have to trust me on this one. So, I'm not saying not to give of yourself because that's very important. And there are some people who are really lousy at giving of themselves, and they would probably have to go the other way and have to learn how to give of themselves. Whereas, and they would probably be the people taking from you. But if you're a natural born giver and a natural born caretaker, it's critical that you really learn how to manage the amount of energy you put into these relationships. And I think we're taught in some ways, um, either not to take care of ourselves, that it's not really something that's a virtue in American culture, or I see all these kind of stupid self-care posts. And self-care is such a broad term. I mean, okay, what does that mean and how do you do it, right? So again, I think it's important that therapists give you some tools and some ideas of how to actually put these things into practice, and that's what I'm really trying to do today. So right now in the first 20 minutes we're talking about kind of assessing it. How do we begin to understand whether or not these relationships are, not good for us, sucking too much out of us, and we're giving too much, right? So the physiology, the emotional feelings, the exhaustion, the hurt, the disappointment, and the resentments. And how do you know if you're resentful? We all been resentful. Resentful is, I believe, unexpressed anger that you're holding in unexpressed hurt and anger that you're not really expressing or speaking up to the person causing it in your life. And you just get almost bitter towards people. And that's never healthy either. So, learning how to assess it, we're sort of, laying that out for you, for everyone who's watching, so you get the idea of how to actually assess the problem. Now, the next step is what do we actually do about it? Okay. And are we backing, in the assessment process, like, are we just feeling obligated to a particular person because of their title or role in our life, mother, father, sister, brother, best friend, cousin, whatever, child, stepchild, and on and on and on. Once we have that and we know, okay, this relationship is not good for me. I'm feeling all those things Elizabeth talked about. What do I do? What do I do? Now here's the tough part, because you have a couple options of what you can do, right? So the first thing that I always recommend to people is to do a little bit of self-reflection and some thinking before we just lash out at people or cut a relationship off. And that self-reflection, of course, can be done through therapy. But if you don't have an interest in going to therapy and you don't want to do that, that's okay. There's ways that you can kind of do this on your own. And there's a lot of great books out there that talk about this process. Um, I have lots of podcasts you could watch that all sort of, play into this idea of what I'm talking about. But I think that the self reflection piece kind of looks like perhaps, jotting down a few notes on a piece of paper and saying, okay, for example, I'm gonna make up a fake person, okay? His name is Joe, right? Joe Blow. I have a relationship with Joe Blow, and Joe Blow is my husband, okay? And every day I wake up and I make him coffee and I make dinner for him and I pick up his prescriptions and his dry cleaning. And yes, I'm still working, and I take all his phone calls throughout the day and help him, put out all his fires, and blah blah blah, and on and on and on. And then I realize that I'm not really getting anything done in my life because I'm so focused on Joe and Joe's needs and Joe's desires and Joe's wants. And this goes on for, a couple of months, couple of years, and I start to feel like I'm hitting a wall. I'm crying, I'm hitting emotional breakdowns, I'm not doing my work, I'm procrastinating, I have no energy, I'm either gaining too much weight or losing too much weight because I'm in overdrive, and just everything feels out of balance and out of whack. Okay. That would be an example of where I'm putting too much into Joe and Joe's not giving enough back. It's always about Joe instead of Joe and Elizabeth. Okay. So, how could that relationship be different? Well, step one would be self reflecting, assessing it, recognizing that it's an issue for me, and then deciding um, what is it that I need from Joe. And we all have needs. We all have things that we need in relationships. And it's all different. Everyone has different needs in relationships, but we've all got them. Nobody is superhuman and nobody is, you know, uh, God, right? So we all have human needs that are emotional, they're physical, financial, social. I mean, you name it, we've got all the needs as human beings. So here I am doing everything for Joe, and my whole day's around Joe, and I'm feeling like completely hanging out to dry. So, do I talk to Joe about it? Do I just naturally start pulling back? Do I show him? And or do I go to divorce him, right? And obviously, the third would be way too extreme in my view. Okay. So, the first order of business is, you know, once we've identified the problem and we understand it, I think we owe it to ourselves to talk to that person if they are important enough to you. If they're not that important to you, then I might say you might be able to just sort of back off. But I think the first line of solving this problem is to talk to this person. Tell this person how you're feeling, not in an accusatory way, not in an attacking way, not in the way that, you do nothing for me and I do everything for you. And that's usually what happens. And that's why people wind up in couples therapy. They wind up in my office because they don't talk very nicely to each other. But I think we can go to this person and say, hey, I'm sort of feeling left out to dry here. I'm feeling really tired in our relationship, and I need more from you. And the other person might be like, well, what do you mean? I don't understand. And you're going to have to figure out how to really explain to them what it is that you want. And you're not going to be able to explain to people what you want, what you need if you don't know that yourself. And that's why the self reflection piece is so important. You have to really look within and say, okay, what are my needs in this relationship? And what are my needs from this person? What must I have to feel like I'm managing my energy and my output in this relationship? And have a conversation with them. And if they love you and they care about you, they're going to hear you out. Of course, they're going to get a little defensive. Everybody does when they think or they know at first that they've hurt somebody. Not me. I didn't do that. But if you handle it and you stick with it and you speak to somebody from your heart, which is very hard to do for most of us, but it's a skill that you can practice, and ask this person for exactly what you need. Hopefully, they will care about you and love you enough to say, okay, you know what? I'm really sorry. I didn't realize that that's how it was going, and I will work on that and I will do better. And once you get over that hump, then I think we go back to self-reflection and we say, okay, what do I need to do to change my behavior in this relationship? Because we teach people how to treat us. Let me say that again. We teach people how to treat us. So if somebody isn't treating you the way you like to be treated, look in the mirror. Look in the mirror and ask yourself, wow, how have I taught this person that they can treat me this way? And you'll figure it out. And it's probably because you're not getting your own needs met. You're not advocating for yourself. You're not acting in favor of yourself in a relationship. You're putting out too much energy and you're drained. So when you come to that realization, you can then say, you know what? Going back to the Elizabeth and Joe example, I'm not picking up the phone every time Joe calls me during the day because I have work to do too. And it's interrupting my day and I'm not getting the things done that I need to do. So I'm not gonna answer every call. I don't need to. I'm not this person's personal assistant or their personal therapist. I mean, I have clients that do this to me. They'll text me 15 times a day. It's very rare because my clients are amazing, but every once in a while, once a year, I get one. They think I'm their personal, assistant or, that I work for them full time and that they can text me, 10 literally 10 times a day and I can answer their every need. That's a boundary crossing. And that should not be an expectation of anybody, whether they're a service provider or a friend or a spouse. People need space and room to do what they need to do in their own lives, right? Last week, we talked about personal freedoms and how to feel free within a relationship. Well, if you're in a relationship that's sucking you dry, you sure as hell are not feeling very free. Okay. So we have to not only express how we're feeling to this person in this relationship, friend, sister, brother, cousin, spouse, grandparent, parent, whatever, whoever. But then we also have to do our part, which is checking ourselves, looking in the mirror and saying, wow, how have I taught this person that they can treat me this way and that this is okay? And it's very interesting when you start looking at yourself and realizing how you have enabled so much of this chaos yourself. And you've enabled it by working harder than the other person in this relationship. Now, when it comes to parents and children, this gets very tricky because the dynamic is very different because we as parents are responsible legally, emotionally, physically, everything for our children, right? So we have to provide for them. And that can take up a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of effort. But I still believe that even within the young children parent relationship, that there still can be room for yourself if you work at it and you have a good spouse who's willing to help you or a good, you know, parent who's willing to help you. We need help with children, raising children. It's a busy world we live in today and everybody's working and everyone's exhausted and so we need help. But I do believe that there can be room for everybody if it's really managed right. And that might be a whole complete different show because the parent-child relationship definitely has that different dynamic because of the dependence factor that young children have on their parents for all of their needs. But even within that, we still have to make sure that we protect our own energy even as a parent and learn how to tell the children no. Go entertain yourselves, call grandma, and figure it out because your mental health is everything. And I see so many clients in my office, especially in today's world, just exhausted. Exhausted. They have nothing left. I tell a lot of my clients, you look like the little Bitmoji cartoon. That's the girl, like she's laying on the floor and gas tank pointers on empty, like way on empty, because they are just, there's just nothing in the car. There's no gas left. And when you're on empty and you're on empty for a long time, we get health problems, we get emotional problems, we get depressed, we get anxious, we have little breakdowns. I mean, I must have had 6 people, no exaggeration, call me this week and tell me, "Elizabeth, I really need to talk. I've hit a wall." 6 people at least. And they've all run themselves into the ground, and they're all over giving, over caretaking, over outputting energy into a relationship or multiple relationships and getting literally nothing back. And there's nothing to show for it in the end, guys. There's really not. There's no prize, there's no award, there's no, higher, level that you're going to rise to on planet Earth. Okay. It's not going to happen. So we must learn how to self care and not just say self care day, hashtag self care day, and wrap ourselves in a turban and do a facial. Okay. That is not self care. That's a nice thing to do for half an hour to relax yourself. I'm all about it. It's fun. I like it. But that's not really self care. Self care is so much deeper than that and so much more rewarding than a facial. Okay. And again, I'm not putting facials down. I enjoy them, but that is not true self care. True self care begins with what we're talking about today, which is managing your output in your relationships. Because you can do all the face masks you want, and you can do all your hashtag selfie self care day BS, and it doesn't mean a damn thing. That is not self care. That's taking a bath or washing your face, which are nice things again, but they're not the answer to long term self care. And if you do the long term self care stuff that I'm talking about, the real stuff, not the fake stuff, the real stuff, then you're going to have a lot more time and a lot more room and a lot more energy to do the little spa day and the facials and that kind of stuff. And again, I do all those things and I love it, but it doesn't necessarily do much for me really as far as true self-care. It's a moment of relaxation, it's a little time to myself. But for me, it's something more that, I enjoy, but I have to do those things. And I like to do those things, but it's not really the answer. The answer is saving yourself, some of yourself for yourself, and not giving all of yourself away to other people who are going to basically, not appreciate and reciprocate. Okay, so let's recap where we've been. So if you're just tuning in, you know where we've been, you know where we're going. Okay, so we're talking today about managing our output of energy in our relationships, managing our efforts within our relationships, our close relationships. And first step is assessing, how do we know when we're putting too much into relationships and not getting enough back? And we talked about checking in with your body, your physiology. How are you physically feeling? Are you drained? Are you getting sick all the time? Are you exhausted? Are you anxious? Is your body giving you those warning signs? And, are your emotional needs being met or not? And are you feeling hurt all the time and rejected all the time and disappointed all the time? Because that will drain you emotionally. That will drain your emotional system. That will drain your serotonin. That will make you feel like crap. I don't think I can swear, but like not good. So we assess. Then after we assess, hey, yeah, this something's up with this relationship or these relationships or all the relationships in my life because I'm feeling like crap all the time. Then we kind of do the self reflection. and we write down on a piece of paper, what relationships are draining us, what's going on in those relationships, and what am I doing to teach people that it's okay for them to treat me like this and drain the heck out of me because I have a role in that too. Okay. So we assess it, we recognize it, we self reflect, and then we try to speak up to that person or persons that we feel are crossing our boundaries or draining us, et cetera, if it's important enough to you. If it's a spouse, if it's a child, if it's someone really significant and important to you, I think it's always, always, always important to first try to resolve it. That's what relationships are about, right? We talk, we share. Maybe the other person doesn't realize what they're doing. Maybe you've given them like the wrong signals because you haven't put up any boundaries with them. So, always good to try to go right to the source and have a direct conversation. Okay. And if that doesn't work and they're not hearing you and you're not getting anywhere, then it's really time to show people. And this is, definitely the most extreme and severe ways of handling things. But sometimes we're left without a choice because we're trying to communicate to our loved ones. We're trying to communicate to our friends. We're bearing our soul. We're telling them that we're feeling hurt. We're feeling disappointed. We're feeling unloved. We're feeling drained. La 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 la. We're getting resentful. We don't want to be that way in the relationship. We're letting them know how they can, help us get our needs met in the relationship. And if nothing changes, then okay, now we've got a bigger problem at hand. And when it gets to this, what I do personally and what I recommend my clients do is start showing people because actions speak a lot louder than words. So if people aren't hearing you, and they're not paying attention and they're not responding to you, then guess what, guys? Time to do business and it's time to show people what you mean. Okay. And now this is going to be like a step 4 or 5 of this whole show. Okay. Of managing your energy output in relationships. So, how do you show people? Telling people how you feel is one thing. It's a little easier. But how do you show people how not to tread upon you? And how do you really teach people how to treat you? And anyone who's been my client who's watching is probably laughing and they're like, I know the answer to this. Elizabeth and her damn boundaries. But boundaries are so important and so critical to high functioning, successful relationships that I don't even have a word to express how important they are. And boundary setting can be really difficult if you've never done it. This is definitely the stage where I would, recommend going to therapy. Give me a phone call. You can always just do one session. You don't have to call me and then see me every week. I'm not that kind of therapist. Um, get some professional help, read some books. There's some good books out there. There's some crappy books out there. But boundaries are really important. And I have lots of videos about boundaries as well. So, okay. What are boundaries? Boundaries are their limits that um, you show people don't cross. These are my limits through your behavior, okay? And through your response to their behavior. All right. So if we're going back to the marriage that I described between Elizabeth and Joe, where, Joe's calling Elizabeth 15 times through the day and all of this stuff. And did you, she's constantly, cooking for him and doing everything for him all day. And she's, picking up his prescriptions and picking up his dry cleaning and putting out all his fires and doing all of these things for him. And he's not really doing anything back for her. So now she's talked to Joe. She said, Joe, listen, I love you, honey, but I'm doing so much for you. And I love doing these things for you, but I'm feeling exhausted. I really need something back from you. I sometimes I need to talk to you during the day. Sometimes I just don't have time to pick up all your stuff because I'm so tired. I don't want to get up early and make you coffee all the time because I need my sleep. If Joe doesn't start making some changes with Elizabeth and doesn't start working through things, okay, now it's time for Elizabeth to start laying the law down, right? Time to do business in the house. And so, how does one show somebody? Well, if Joe's not responding to Elizabeth, then I would say, Elizabeth, don't get up and make coffee anymore. Or instead of making Joe coffee every morning, make him coffee every other morning and let him see what it's like to not have somebody make his coffee. And I bet you he'll figure out how to make his own coffee. And by Joe figuring out how to make his own coffee, then Elizabeth's off the hook for some of the day. And she has a little bit more sleep in the morning and she's going to feel a little bit better and have a little bit more energy to go about her day. That's one example. Example number two, she's told Joe, please don't call me 15 times a day every time something happens with you at work because it's interrupting my flow. And Joe doesn't listen and he keeps calling Elizabeth 15 times a day. Well, then I would advise Elizabeth to stop taking his phone calls and to put her phone on silent and once a day to check in with him for 10 minutes and that's it. So I literally do this sometimes with people who drain me. I will look at the clock and I'll say, okay, I'm calling this person at 6:45 and I will be hanging up at 7. That's it. And I'll start wrapping up the conversation at 6:55 because I'm not going to sit on a 3-hour phone conversation with this person or a 2-hour phone conversation because it's draining to me, right? So that's another way that you can show people you're changing your behavior and you're teaching people how to treat you. And by Elizabeth not taking all of Joe's phone calls 15 times a day, he will have to say, "Oh, okay, I can't get a hold of Elizabeth. I don't have her here to ask her what to do in this situation, so I'm gonna have to figure it out myself." Or, "Gee, I never realized how much I count on Elizabeth to be there for me. Maybe I took her for granted. Now she won't even take my calls during the day. Gee, I feel bad. She tried to talk to me about it a couple weeks ago and I totally ignored her. Now I get it. Now I get it." Okay. So there's two ways you can show somebody boundaries. Okay. Sometimes I have through the years had clients that totally have no respect for my personal boundaries at all. And they've called me like on Saturday nights at dinner time when I'm out to dinner with my family and, they'll call and call and call and call until I pick up the phone. And most of these things happen when I first started. And I'm sure I contributed to that by saying, oh, I'm there for you anytime and didn't really think people would actually call me on a Saturday night, but they do. They did. They don't anymore, but they did back in the early days of my work. I had another woman who used to call me at 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. So again, those are extreme cases, but and I would tell her, don't call me in the middle of the night. I mean, that's so rude. You're ruining my sleep. Who do you call? Anyone? And she just couldn't help herself. She's mentally ill and she was very anxious. And so I had to, you know, block her phone overnight. You do what you have to do to show people that you mean business. And I do believe that sometimes actions are so much more powerful, but they can be more extreme and they can be confusing without communication. So, you want to lay out the communication. That is always like the number one first step. Um, Another way you can show people where your boundaries are is you can sort of back off a little bit. If you're the person that's always present for somebody else to just talk about themselves and it's draining to you, you can change it up by intervening in the middle of the conversation and saying, "Hey, wait a second. I need to stop you for just a minute. Um, I've been listening to you for like the last 30 minutes straight, and you haven't even asked how I am. Are you curious?" I mean, that's really bold, or again, time limits on phone calls, and I really have to do this because I am so busy all day talking to people, doing my sessions, taking phone calls, scheduling, administrative. I do it all, my marketing. So at the end of the day, I'm exhausted and I really don't want to talk on the phone that much. Not because I don't love people, but I'm tired. And sometimes even returning a text is feels like too much for me, as strange as that may sound. And now I really respect that about myself. I used to feel guilty and bad, and you know what? I can only be so much to so many people, and I think we all have to have some appreciation and some love for ourselves, and really learn how to respect the amount of energy that we have. Because if you think about it, every day we wake up and we have a different sort of amount of energy to output every day, depending on a lot of things, depending on how we slept, depending on, if we're getting along with our spouses or not, if our children are sick or not, how we are feeling, if we're in pain, if we're not in pain, if we're stressed out or not stressed out, if we ate well the night before, we didn't, if we drank too much, we didn't. I mean, there's so many things that will play into the amount of energy that you have each day, and I do believe it's limited. I believe there's a cap on that, and, if you exploit that very precious sacred energy that you get just for the day, you're gonna always wind up the loser, meaning you will be the one that is drained, sick, miserable, stressed, crying. And I believe that, what I'm talking about today is so important. It might be one of the most important shows I've ever done. And I think that when we don't learn how to manage our energy output, that's when we go to addiction. That's when we go to drinking and, anxiety pills and antidepressants and tranquilizers and medical marijuana and way worse than that. Eating, not taking care of ourselves. So we only have so much energy each day given to us or created by us. We only have so much time in the day to talk to people to get things done. And, I always think about, when I was growing up 30, maybe 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, and we didn't have cell phones, the expectations of a human being were so much more reasonable than they are today. And because of texting and emails and cell phones, there's this, cultural expectation that someone has to get right back to you immediately and that someone has to respond to you immediately and that you have to respond to them immediately, that it's enough to make you crazy. I mean, the pressure is just, it's just too much for us. And I think that's why we're all breaking down and getting mentally ill. So, learning to manage and conserve your energy in your relationships is like number one, numero uno, most important thing you can do for yourself. And, I would never, ever, ever recommend, cutting off relationships or ending relationships unless they're abusive or really bad or really hurtful, because I think the way that we learn and we grow is by learning to communicate our needs with a relationship with another person and having that person respond to us. And that's a really beautiful thing. I mean, really beautiful. That's what relationships are all about. That's love, that's beauty, that's That's what makes relationships worth it. But if we are constantly putting out and giving and not watching and managing how much we're giving out and putting out, we will wind up with an empty tank on the floor, depressed, anxious, sick, crying, etc. I see it every day in my office. I've been through it myself so many times. And it's really taken me to 45 years old to really get a good handle on this. And everyone isn't going to like it because there are certain people who just, they just want to talk to you and they want to talk to you. And, they're going to be a little pissed, or upset when you don't return their calls or, you know, but I just apologize and I say, I'm just doing the best I can do. Please forgive me. It's not that I don't care about you. It's not that I don't love you. I just don't have the energy in me to do this right now or do it tonight, but I will call you in the morning or I will get to you soon. And I think people hopefully will understand. And if they don't, they're too needy, and you need to be really careful. You need to be really careful with people who are just too needy. That could be a whole nother situation, right? So really important show. I walked you guys through from A to Z, really on steps of you know, how to figure out if you're putting too much energy out into relationships, how to figure that out, what to do about it, the steps we can take to actually do something about it from, conversations and speaking up for yourself to actions and how to show exactly how to do it. And, I could give so many more examples, but it isn't a bad thing to take care of oneself. It's a beautiful thing, and it leaves room and it leaves space for balance in your life and in your relationships. And rest is just as important as hard work. And resting, taking care of yourself, taking a step back from your, more needy friends and family members, or limiting your interaction and teaching people your boundaries through action or words is your human right. You don't owe anybody anything, and nobody owes you anything. Our relationships are by choice ultimately. And of course, when it comes to parents and children, especially young children, that may not hold 100% true because we are, in my view, responsible and obligated to our children emotionally, physically, financially, all those ways. But even that being said, I still believe there's a way to find room for yourself. Not easy. You need help, but it can be done. It can be done. So, my mother used to say a lot of different things, but one of her sayings was, the road to hell was paved with good intentions. Okay. And I would apply that to this conversation by saying that we might all be well meaning and we want to be there for other people and we really genuinely care and empathize and feel for other people. And we really want to help and we want to be a hero and we want to be everything to everyone. Our intentions may all be good, but we can literally drown ourselves and, choke ourselves emotionally when we do too much, when we work harder than everybody else, when we give more than everybody else. It's not fair. So we need to learn how to stand up for ourselves and take care of ourselves the real way, the way that I'm talking about, not the phony way, the fake way, hashtag self-care day. That is not self-care. That is, you know, a break, but, I go to the hair salon, I go to get my nails and I see everyone's on their phones. That's not self-care. That's, doing something nice for yourself. It's wonderful. I encourage it. I encourage everyone to do it. You know, I love the beauty industry, but it's not self-care. It's it's something in the realm of, but it's not going to you can go to salon 5 times a week and feel like complete crap because the only way to truly care for yourself is through, taking care of your needs in your relationships. And you can take that to the bank and you can put that in your pipe and smoke it. Okay? So, thank you so much for watching. Please click subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. Please, please, please. I need lots of subscribers on my channel. The more subscribers I have, the more people I can help. All of you who watch me on Instagram and traditionally Facebook, was where my really big audience has been. Thank you to my faithful viewers on Facebook. And we're switching it up. It's simple. The link's right there on my Facebook page every day. Instagram does not support links, so I will put directions on Instagram of how to get to my YouTube channel because that's where I'm really going to be going live all the time from, and where I'm going to start putting most of my content is going to be on YouTube. So hit subscribe, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Facebook. I'm soon to be on TikTok, and we're reaching out and we're going big with Liz Live, and we're going to help as many people as we can, and we're not going to stop until we do. So please be a part of it. It's fun, it's exciting. We're learning new things, we're helping people. Subscribe and share. And if you're out, today and you're talking to your friends and they're oh, I'm so exhausted, and say, hey, you got to see this show. You got to see Liz Live from today. She talked about this exactly. Share the beauty of these, subjects that we're talking about with friends and family because they can really change lives. And that's what Liz Live is all about, changing lives and helping people. That's what we do. So thank you for watching. I will see you live Wednesday here on YouTube at 11 a.m. for more fun conversation. And if you follow me on YouTube, I put content on there almost every day. So we've always got fun things to talk about going on YouTube. So have a wonderful July weekend and take care of yourselves the real way, not the phony way. Take care of yourself in relationships. And as always, if you need help, I am very reachable through Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, email, internet, actuation counseling, actuation-counseling.com. Everything's on social media. It's just so easy to get to me. Love you guys. Thank you for watching. Happy and healthy weekend, and I will see you all next time.